The most dangerous voice in your life is not the one that criticizes you. It is the one that comforts you when you should be correcting yourself. You fail, and you say, "It was not meant to be." You procrastinate, and you say, "I needed rest." You are rejected, and you say, "They did not deserve me anyway." It feels mature, it feels emotionally intelligent, it even feels stoic. But it is not. There is a form of self-consolation that quietly weakens your character. It protects your ego at the exact moment your character needs friction. It gives relief without growth, and relief without growth slowly erodes self-respect. Marcus Aurelius did not write meditations to soothe himself. He wrote to discipline his perceptions. Seneca did not preach comfort. He warned against self-deception. Epictetus did not teach people how to feel better. He taught them how to see clearly. Here is the uncomfortable truth. When you rush to console yourself, you may be interrupting the very discomfort designed to strengthen you. There is a difference between stabilizing yourself and sedating yourself. One prepares you for action, the other postpones it. Consolation becomes dangerous the moment it replaces responsibility. There is nothing wrong with calming yourself after pain. The problem begins when calm turns into justification. You start editing reality to protect your pride. You soften your mistakes, you reduce your standards. You reinterpret failure so you do not have to confront it. At first it feels harmless. You tell yourself you are being kind. You say you are protecting your peace. But look closely. Is it peace, or is it avoidance dressed as wisdom? Every time you console yourself instead of correcting yourself, something subtle happens. Your inner authority weakens. The part of you that knows the truth becomes negotiable. Your conscience stops being a compass and becomes a suggestion. Epictetus taught that what truly belongs to you is your faculty of choice. That inner ruling center is your power. When you rush to comfort instead of examine, you train that center to prefer ease over excellence. And here is the cost no one talks about. You begin to lose respect for yourself. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly. You know when you could have acted better. You know when you avoided discomfort. If you repeatedly silence that knowledge with comforting narratives, you divide yourself. One part knows the truth. The other part protects the ego. A divided mind cannot be strong. Stoicism does not demand cruelty toward yourself. It demands honesty. It asks you to look at what happened without distortion. To say, this was my failure. This was within my control. This is where I must improve. That is not harshness. That is dignity. And once you see how consolation can erode responsibility, a deeper question emerges. Why are we so eager to escape discomfort in the first place? You are not seeking comfort. You are seeking escape. Consoling yourself often sounds noble, but beneath the surface there is a quieter motive. You want relief from tension. You want distance from shame. You want protection from the sting of truth. Look closely, and you will see 4 common escapes hidden inside self-consolation. The first is escape from responsibility. It was not my fault. They misunderstood me. The circumstances were unfair. Maybe they were. But when you cling to that narrative too quickly, you lose the opportunity to ask the harder question, what was still in my control? The second is escape from discomfort. I will try again tomorrow. I deserve a break. One delay becomes a habit. Discomfort is the price of growth, and when you console yourself out of it, you quietly choose stagnation. The third is escape from grief. It did not matter anyway, I did not really care. This is self-protection. But unprocessed pain does not disappear. It settles deeper and resurfaces as bitterness. The fourth is escape from rejection. They are just jealous. They could not handle me. Perhaps, but sometimes rejection is feedback, and feedback, even when painful, is instruction. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that events are neutral. It is the judgment that disturbs us. When you console yourself, you often replace one judgment with another, softer one. But the distortion remains. Stoicism does something different. It removes the unnecessary story and leaves the fact. Then it asks, what virtue is required now? That question is uncomfortable. It forces you to grow instead of hide. It demands courage instead of comfort. And now the tension deepens. If consolation is often escape, how do you avoid becoming cold or harsh with yourself? If you remove consolation, you must replace it with instruction. Otherwise, you become harsh. And harshness is not Stoicism. It is wounded pride pretending to be strength. When something goes wrong, your instinct is to either attack yourself or comfort yourself. Both reactions miss the point. One destroys confidence, the other protects weakness. The Stoic path is different. It is calm, precise, and disciplined. First, name what is in your control. Strip the situation down to its core, not the story, not the emotion, the facts. What did you choose? What can you still choose? Marcus Aurelius trained himself to separate events from interpretation. This restores clarity. Second, ask what virtue demands now. Courage, patience, honesty, self-restraint. Virtue is not abstract. It is specific to the moment. If you were rejected, perhaps dignity is required. If you failed, perhaps persistence is required. If you acted poorly, perhaps humility is required. Third, take one clean action immediately. Not tomorrow, not when you feel better, now. A message sent, a boundary set, a task begun. Action rebuilds inner authority. This three-part discipline replaces emotional sedation with constructive direction. You still calm yourself, but you do it in order to move, not to hide. And something powerful begins to happen. You stop negotiating with your conscience. You start trusting yourself again. Because each time you respond with instruction instead of consolation, you prove that you are governed by principle, not impulse. But there is one last tension we must confront. If you stop consoling yourself in the wrong way, what happens to your need for comfort? Where does compassion fit? If you remove false consolation without understanding compassion, you risk becoming rigid. And rigidity is not strength. It is fear disguised as discipline. Stoicism is often misunderstood as emotional suppression, but Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself with firmness and care. He did not insult his weaknesses. He corrected them. There is a difference. Compassion is not telling yourself comforting lies. Compassion is refusing to abandon yourself when you face the truth. When you fail, compassion says you are still responsible and you are still worthy of improvement. When you feel pain, compassion says this hurts and you are capable of enduring it. When you are rejected, compassion says, this does not define you, but it may refine you. False consolation removes the lesson. True compassion preserves the lesson while protecting your dignity. Seneca reminded us that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Compassion helps you confront reality without exaggeration. It steadies you so you can see clearly. It does not distort facts to protect pride. You do not need a softer story. You need a stronger character guided by clarity and supported by patience. Strength without compassion becomes cruelty. Compassion without strength becomes weakness. The Stoic path unites both. Now everything comes together. If consolation can sedate you, and instruction can strengthen you, and compassion can steady you, then what kind of person do you become when you choose this path consistently? When you stop consoling your ego and start governing your mind, your identity changes. You no longer see yourself as someone who needs protection from discomfort. You begin to see yourself as someone capable of facing it. That shift is quiet, but it is decisive. Each time you resist the urge to soften the truth, you strengthen your ruling faculty. Each time you choose instruction over excuse, you reinforce self-trust. And self-trust is the foundation of unshakable calm. Epictetus taught that freedom is not doing what you want. It is wanting what is within your control. When you abandon false consolation, you stop demanding that reality be easier. You demand that your character be stronger. This is where real peace emerges. Not the fragile peace that depends on circumstances, not the temporary relief that comes from telling yourself convenient stories, but the stable peace that comes from alignment between your principles and your actions. You stop saying, "It is fine," when it is not. You stop saying it does not matter when it does. You stop protecting your image and start refining your character. And something unexpected happens. You feel lighter, not because life became easier, but because you are no longer divided inside. The most dangerous voice in your life was never the critic. It was the one that told you there was nothing to improve. Now you know better. The question is no longer whether consoling yourself is dangerous. The question is whether you are ready to replace comfort with clarity, avoidance with virtue, and sedation with strength. There is one final truth you must face. If you constantly console yourself, you train your mind to seek relief instead of growth. But if you consistently instruct yourself, you train your mind to seek virtue instead of validation. This is not about becoming severe. It is about becoming sovereign. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that the obstacle is the way, not the excuse, not the comforting narrative, the obstacle itself. When you stop anesthetizing discomfort, you start extracting meaning from it. Think about your last failure. Did you rush to explain it away? Did you soften its edges? Or did you examine it, take ownership, and act differently? Your future character is being shaped in those exact moments. Self-consolation says, protect your feelings. Stoic discipline says, protect your standards. One keeps you comfortable, the other makes you formidable. And here is the deeper freedom. When you no longer need to defend your ego, criticism loses its power. Rejection loses its sting. Failure loses its drama. Because your worth is no longer tied to avoiding discomfort. It is tied to responding with virtue. This is the invitation. Stop soothing what needs strengthening. Stop silencing what needs correction. Stop negotiating with the part of you that already knows the truth. You do not need to feel better immediately. You need to become better consistently. If you are ready, begin today. The next time you feel the urge to console yourself, pause. Ask what is in your control. Ask what virtue demands, then act. That is how strength is built. Chapter 9. Now comes the test. It is easy to agree with these ideas while listening. It is much harder when the moment arrives, when you are criticized unfairly, when you are ignored, when you fall short again. That is where your philosophy is revealed. In that instant, two voices will rise. One will say, protect yourself, explain it away, reduce the discomfort, preserve your image. The other will say, pause, examine, accept what is true, correct what is yours, let go of what is not. The first voice offers immediate relief. The second builds lasting authority. This is where most people fail, not because they lack intelligence, not because they lack knowledge, but because they prefer short-term emotional comfort over long-term character. Marcus Aurelius did not become steady because life was gentle with him. He became steady because he refused to lie to himself about what was required of him. He did not need perfect circumstances. He needed disciplined perception. You are no different. Every day gives you small opportunities to choose instruction over consolation, a conversation you avoided, a task you postponed, a truth you softened. These are not dramatic events, they are daily training. Character is not built in crisis, it is built in these quiet decisions. So the real question is not whether consoling yourself is dangerous. If you stop softening every rejection, you will see blind spots. If you stop justifying every delay, you will see your unrealized potential. That realization is heavy. It demands responsibility. It demands change. And change threatens the version of you that is comfortable. Seneca warned that we cling to familiar vices because they feel like part of us. When you remove consolation, you remove the shield protecting those habits. You stand exposed before your own standards. The real question is this: when the next uncomfortable moment arrives, which voice will you obey? Because the voice you obey repeatedly becomes the person you become. There is one more layer most people never examine. Sometimes you console yourself not because you are weak, but because you are afraid of discovering who you could become without excuses. Growth removes hiding places. If you stop soothing every failure, you will see patterns. This is why consolation feels safe. It keeps you small but comfortable. Stoic discipline feels demanding because it expands you. It forces you to confront the gap between who you are and who you could be. But here is the paradox. The moment you stop protecting your ego, you stop fearing growth. The moment you stop inventing softer narratives, you stop being controlled by them. You begin to live with greater precision, greater self-respect, greater calm. Not because life becomes easier, but because you are no longer negotiating with truth. Now you must choose what kind of relationship you will have with yourself. Will you be your own sedative, constantly lowering the standard so you can sleep peacefully? Or will you be your own guide, steady enough to face what must be faced? This is not about becoming relentless. It is about becoming reliable. Imagine becoming the kind of person who does not need excuses. The kind of person who, when confronted with failure, says calmly, "This is mine to correct." When faced with rejection, says, "This is mine to interpret wisely." When tempted to delay, says, "This is mine to act upon now." That person is not tense. That person is free. Because freedom is not comfort, freedom is alignment. Your thoughts aligned with truth. Your actions aligned with virtue. Your standards aligned with your potential. When you stop consoling yourself falsely, you stop shrinking reality to fit your ego. You expand your character to meet reality. And here is the quiet reward. You begin to trust yourself deeply. You know that when difficulty comes, you will not escape into comforting stories. You will examine, decide, and act. That trust creates a calm no circumstance can take from you. This is the Stoic promise, not relief from pain, mastery within it. Now, the decision is yours.